What is going on, everyone? It is Utopic Draco Future, and no special intro for today because this is a bit of a serious one. And that's because Mexico just got our opponent in the round of 32, and it turns out to be Ecuador. And I've seen so many things from all around the Mexican football space about how Ecuador is our scariest opponent, they're going to be difficult, they're going to be tough, they're going to beat us. And I just wanted to step in here and just hit a hard disagree on that. And I'll get into it. I know you read the title. I'll get into that. But I first of all want to begin this video by asking some difficult questions. And we'll start with the first one. Why are some Mexican fans afraid of Ecuador? Is it because of the defensive structure? Is it because of the CONMEBOL tax? Mexico struggles against CONMEBOL historically. Is it because they have players in Arsenal, Chelsea, all over the world, even the giants of Pumas? That's a big question. I'm sure there are many other factors, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be answering that question in today's video. But I do just want to highlight, first of all, before anything else, since I've seen so much negativity and worry in the Mexican football space, I want this video to act as a sort of breath of fresh air when it comes to facing Ecuador. Because yes, I truly think, as I say in the title, this isn't a gimmick, this isn't anything like that. I do think that we'll make it easy against Ecuador. I think it's a huge possibility. And will it be a difficult ask? Yeah. But I think that we have the ability to fight through the difficulty and make it easy, if that makes sense. Let's move on to the next question. Will the Azteca be a factor in this game? Well, I've heard from a lot of people that the altitude won't be a factor because Ecuador is used to playing in Quito and Bolivia when they have to go play qualifying there. So I've heard that the altitude won't affect them. And I don't necessarily care about the answer, but I will say this. No matter what, being away from home, not being the home side like they were against Germany, is going to play a factor, okay? Regardless of the altitude. Now, you can make the argument, and I've seen the argument as far as, these players play in Europe. The only ones that are really used to the altitude are the ones that play in Liga MX, the players that play in the Ecuadorian League, all of that. And while I don't necessarily disagree with you, I don't really care about that. I think that the thing that will be a bigger factor will be the fact that it's going to be away from home. Now, the CONMEBOL tax, as we addressed earlier, could be a factor. However, I just don't think that Mexico is as affected by this against Ecuador as they are against a Colombia or an Argentina. I just don't, okay? And I know that these CONMEBOL teams, they fight, they're very gritty, they like to do what they do, they like to make it ugly, and that sometimes gives us some problems. But I don't think that this is as much of a factor as a Colombia or Argentina, okay? I think that Ecuador is a little bit different. I think we come from a similar background. That's probably why it won't be as much of a factor, because the Colombians and the Argentinians and the Brazilians of the world can use their hierarchy as a sort of leverage point against us, whereas the Ecuadorians don't have as much history as those teams. Maybe I'm just yapping, but I've seen us in recent results against Ecuador that makes me think that it won't be as much of a factor. Okay, that's the next question. Another question, was the Germany win a fluke? No, I don't think it was a fluke. No, I think that it was a great win. And shout out to Ecuador. I think they really pulled it out of the bag with this one. They gritted down and they got the result. This doesn't change the fact that Germany had nothing to play for. Now, I know they used their A-team, aside from maybe like 2 injuries, but they used their A-team. That doesn't change the fact that they had nothing to play for. That affects you subconsciously in a way that you don't necessarily see on the field until you see it on the field, if that makes sense. Regardless though, I'm not hating on this result or anything. I do think that it was a great win for Ecuador. It was obviously the best win in their history, and they'll be coming off of that high playing against us. So that's something to consider. Is it a huge factor? Well, let's talk about the results against Curacao and Ivory Coast. I simply can't ignore those. I can't get those out of my head like I'm Kylie Minogue. Curacao gave them hell for 90 minutes, and they couldn't score. Ivory Coast gave them hell for 90 minutes, and they couldn't score until they got scored on the very end. What will be the Ecuador that shows up against Mexico? That's also a question to consider. Who will Ecuador be when they show up against us? Because you guys might think that Mexico has a lot that's riding against us in this game, but Ecuador has more. Mexican players are not under pressure right now. Well, they're definitely under pressure, but they're not as much under the pressure. They're not feeling it in the way that you guys are feeling it. I'm sorry. And you have Vasco to thank for this, and Marquez, and whoever else is behind the scenes. But these guys are not on social media. They are completely detached. They're in their own bubble. I think I mentioned it in a previous video. But the way that Aguirre has them set up, this Mexican squad is in a bubble, completely separated from the Mexican media that will put ideas into their head. We don't want no ideas to be put in their head. We don't want anything to be put in their head that makes them have doubt, that makes them have self-consciousness. That's not what's been happening. It may be happened against South Africa. We'll talk about South Africa in a bit, by the way. Against South Africa, it was a very nervy game because there was nerves all around from both sides of the equation. But it definitely affected us more. Actually, probably not. I think it affected South Africa more. But it affected us a lot. Since then, we've only gotten better at handling the nerves. Against South Korea, already it was looking better. Against Czechia, forget about it. We looked amazing. And that's why I say that game was so important, because it told us who we were as a national team. I'm getting ahead of myself. No, the Germany win was not a fluke. Last thing here, Mexico, just reading off of our record here, Mexico is 3 for 3 in the group stages with 6 goals scored and 0 goals conceded. Again, that's very important. Ecuador has 2 goals scored and 2 goals conceded. Those 2 goals were both in the last game, and the 2 goals conceded were in the Germany and Ivory Coast games, respectively. I'm not a stats guy. I don't go on SofaScore. I don't go on FOTMob. So whatever that means is up to interpretation, but I thought that was important to mention. Let's go over my starting 11 for a second, because this is who I think will start against Ecuador, because this is who I want to start against Ecuador. And listen, we'll talk about Mateo Chavez and the midfielders in a second, but this is who I want to start, right? So Tala in goal, of course. Mateo Chavez, he should be the starter. Johan Vazquez, Cesar Montes, Israel Reyes. Any disagreements with that? I think that's pretty, cut and dry there. Again, we'll talk about Mateo Chavez. In the midfield, we have Gil Mora, Eric Lira, and I had Alvaro Fidalgo. Now, I know that Vasco doesn't like to play Mora and Fidalgo together, but I would like to see it happen eventually. I think they'll work well off of each other. I know they're not much of, physical, gritty midfielders, so maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm going to say this. Don't be surprised if you see Luis Romo in that spot instead of Fidalgo. Don't be surprised. We'll get into it later, but don't be surprised, okay? I think Gil Mora has to start. He's an absolute lock. Julian Quiñones is going to be very important, as we'll get into later. Raul Jimenez, I think, will start. Piojo Alvarado, I think, will start. I don't think there's that much disagreements with that. I think you can maybe swap out Edson and Lira if you really want to. Edson has had a great game, but basically my point with this is saying that a lot of our substitutions have come in and done really, really well. And obviously you can't start them all, but knowing that we have a player that's going to be as good, if not better, than the player that you have starting, that's a huge thing. And I don't think Ecuador can bring that same kind of energy. Now about Mateo Chavez. Listen, we will get into the friendly that we played a couple months ago against Ecuador where we tied 1-1. I want to talk about that one right after I talk really quickly about Luis Romo and Jesus Gallardo. Don't be surprised if they start, honestly. Don't be surprised if they start. Jesus Gallardo maybe less so, but Mateo Chavez, if you remember in that friendly against Ecuador, which I went back and rewatched, that friendly was Mateo Chavez's breakout performance. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he had an amazing game, and he started against Ecuador. And I think that he could start again. Obviously, he had an amazing game against Czechia as well, scored the goal. He really should be starting. But I'm just saying, don't be surprised if they both start. Now about that friendly. Again, it was 1-1. And I want to apologize because a couple of videos ago, it was actually a while ago, that I was talking about Luis Romo, and I was confused about why he made the squad. Big mistake, by the way, that aged like milk. And I mentioned that I thought he was dropped after he made a mistake against Colombia in one of our friendlies. And ever since then, he's never been called back again. I was actually wrong, because I went back and looked at the Colombia game. I didn't see no mistake from Luis Romo. But what I did realize was that he did commit a mistake against Ecuador. It was this game. And Ecuador scored off of the penalty. But basically, Luis Romo played the ball back to Tala Rangel. It was too short. I think Ener Valencia got onto it. And then Tala committed a penalty, and they scored off of that. To make it 1-1, by the way. Berterame scored the first goal. Off of a mistake from Ecuador. I think, listen, Luis Romo has improved leaps and bounds since then. Even though he hasn't been called up, this World Cup has proven that he's actually built for this shit. So is Mateo Chavez. I think he's built for this shit. And one thing that I can't ignore in that friendly is the fact that Ecuador was making all kinds of mistakes at the back. All kinds of mistakes. And listen, I know that they've improved since then as well, but I do think that Vegasese is a fraud. I'm sorry, I still think that he's a fraud, regardless of the result. I think that people have sort of rose-colored glasses sometimes. Well, I guess in this case it would be shit-covered glasses, because if you're looking at it from a perspective of a Mexico fan, you're seeing the Ecuador result against Germany and you're trembling in your boots. And I'm asking, why are you trembling in your boots? Vegasese, and this is going to age depending on how this result goes, but I'll say it right now. I'll take the gamble here. Vegasese is a fraud. That was the narrative after the Ecuador game. That was the narrative after they played the friendly against Mexico. That Vegasese is a fraud. And I'm like, when did you guys stop the narrative? Immediately after the full-time whistle for Germany? Immediately after that full-time whistle? I don't think so, man. I don't think so. People talk about the fact that Ecuador is built for these knockout moments. And I haven't seen it because this is the first time Ecuador has been really, really good. This is the first time they've been really, really good. Who said that they're built for these knockout moments? Now, this is going to age depending on, how we do in the actual game, right? Because it could come down to an extra time and penalties, and maybe we lose on penalties. I'll get to my prediction in a second. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to pick Ecuador, okay? I'm not from Quito. I'm not from Guayaquil. Okay, I don't eat encebollado, but spoiler alert, I'm going to pick Mexico. We'll get to my prediction for the score in a second. But I just want to see people pump the brakes a little bit because we're getting a little bit too, I don't want to say scared, but a little bit too worried. Why are we so worried? And I think the main point in all of this first part of the video is saying this. If we truly believe in the saying ECC, why are we worried about Ecuador? Real question. This is a question for the Mexican fans out there. I know that there's some Ecuadorians watching this. Shout out to Ecuador. But this is a question to the Mexicans. And I've never seen this sort of cognitive dissonance before. Because you can't believe these two things at the same time. If you truly believe in the phrase ECC, what does that phrase mean? It means we could possibly win the World Cup, right? What else could it mean? If we truly believe in that phrase, why are we scared of Ecuador? Why are we worried about that game? We should be beating Ecuador. We should make it look comfortable. We should be fighting our demons, right? Because CONMEBOL, right, is this big demon for Mexico. We should be fighting our demons and beating them if we're truly built for this shit. Are we truly built for this shit? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. We're going to find out with this game more so than any other game. More so than Scotland. More so than Cabo Verde. Although that would have been a difficult game as well. Don't get it twisted. A lot of you were hoping and praying for Cabo Verde. That would have been a difficult game as well. I hate to break it to y'all. But if we truly believe in that phrase, ECC, you can't be afraid of Ecuador. I'm sorry to say. I've gone on too long about this point. Let's talk about how to defend Ecuador. Okay. Number one, I've mentioned it. We have to grit down and fight. This will be a very scrappy game. Very, very scrappy. They're going to be bullying around our midfielders. They're going to be trying to push and shove. That's what they do. Number two, don't get arsenaled on set pieces. Dude, their set pieces are good. So are ours, but their set pieces are good as well. I think we're very, very capable of this. We got Johan Vazquez leading the line at the back. We got some very good players in the air. We got Cesar Montes, Edson Alvarez if he starts or comes in later. These players are built for this shit. So don't get arsenaled on set pieces. Or should I say don't get Mexico'd on set pieces. A lot of people are saying that Ecuador is just us but better. I don't think so. I think we're Ecuador but better, I think we do what Ecuador does but better. Hot take, I guess. But I think our attack is better than Ecuador's. Is that a hot take? I mean, it shouldn't be. I never thought I would say that again. I didn't think I would say that about any team that we have a better attack than them. I think we have a better attack than Ecuador. I mean, it shows in the stats. Again, I don't care about the stats necessarily, but we scored 6 goals. I'm getting ahead of myself, okay? Don't get too out of position on defense. This is what I'm worried about with Mateo Chavez. Again, I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's better than Gallardo by far. But sometimes he gets out of position for the better, right? Because he's more attacking. He's better at attacking than Gallardo. But I'm just worried about getting too out of position on defense. Johan Vazquez will hold it down, though. I think that his structure, the way he has set up at the back is very good. So I'm not too worried about this, okay? I'm not too worried about this because, again, Ecuador, they really can't attack that well. Shout out to my Ecuadorians, but they can't attack that well. Now let's talk about how to attack them. I think the biggest thing here is Mora's creativity. We'll have to use that. No doubt that they've been watching the Czechia game. They saw how good Mora was on that side, and they're taking notes. And they're going to try to defend him. They're going to try to man-mark him like Czechia did. The problem I have with that, from the Ecuadorian perspective, is that you have quite a lot of players to worry about. Quiñones will need to make their life hell on the left-hand side. Kind of like Diomande. I know he's not as good as Diomande, but if you saw that Ivory Coast game against Ecuador, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He was making their life hell to the point they had to double team him, maybe even triple team him at some points. And that was how they dealt with Yan Diomande. And then they conceded. Mateo Chavez, again, he's going to be a very important player. He could link up with Quiñones as well. And something that I also want to mention here is regarding the starters. I know I briefly touched on this. Yes, their starters play for better teams, without a doubt. They have, without a doubt, more talented players. We have better depth, by the way. We have better depth. Think about who we could possibly be leaving on the bench. These are players that may start, may not. We'll at least leave some of these players on the bench. Luis Romo, 2 goals and assists in the last 2 games. Fidalgo scored last game. Edson, he's had a 3-for-3 performance at this World Cup so far. Amazing holding mid. And center back, if you want to put him at center back. Mateo Chavez, again, I want to start him, but we could be leaving him on the bench. He scored last game. Brian Gutierrez, he's still doing his thing. And this is full credit to Vasco, by the way. This is more praise being thrown onto Vasco. Our rotations and more so our subs, I know those things aren't exactly the same thing, but more so our subs, they've made the biggest difference in these games, in this World Cup. We actually look better than we do in the first half. We look better in the second half. And this wasn't the case ever before. This is something that I don't see anyone talking about. This was not the case during the friendlies. We look way better in the second half because of the subs. And it's all thanks to this man. He has amazing rotations. Say what you want about his starting 11, but I think I see the vision here. I think I see the vision, like a line between 2 dots. Our starting 11 is such that we wait for the opponent. We want to see how the opponent is going to look. That's why our first half looks so bad sometimes to a neutral. Because we're waiting, we're responding, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then we come on in the second half with the subs, with the rotations, with the different style of play. That's what we do. That's the vision. That's the vision. I see nobody talking about this, by the way. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Utopic Draco Future, that's me. And like the video. And follow me on Instagram, Utopic Draco Future, all that. Now, is there a million more things to talk about in regards to this game? Yes, probably. But I want to talk about my prediction. And I know a lot of y'all have been waiting for this because I feel like some of my predictions have been pretty accurate so far. South Africa was dead accurate. We won't talk about Korea. But Czechia, in a kind of runaround way, was pretty accurate. So here's my Nosferatu-like predictions. 2-0. I'm going 2-0. Okay. And the reason why I say 2-0 is because I think that we're going to South Africa them. We're going to SA them. Let me not abbreviate South Africa. We're going to South Africa them. And I just see this in my mind's eye, right? If you remember the Ecuador friendlies, just to go back to that, the reason why we scored was off of a mistake from Pacho. And I see the same thing happening here. I see either an Ecuador friendly-like mistake at the back or a South Africa-like mistake at the back. But I think this team has mistakes in them. I think looking at the group stage performance so far, the Ecuador that will show up will be the Ecuador that played Ivory Coast, that played Curacao. Hopefully not Curacao because they had a lot of shots on goal, but we're not Curacao. Also, just to, go on a tangent there, we're not Curacao. I see a red card. I see maybe like a one-on-one situation, kind of like the Brian Gutierrez red card. I could see that. Or I could see accumulation of 2 yellow cards, maybe from bullying Mora all game, possibly. And I see Quiñones getting an assist. I see a Quiñones assist to maybe Raul Jimenez. I see a Piojo assist, or maybe even a Piojo goal, honestly. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Maybe you guys think I'm a Piojo glazer, but I see a Piojo goal, to be honest. That's just what I see. That's just me. But there you go. That's my prediction, 2-0. And then I think the goals will probably maybe 1 in the first half and 1 in the second. I know that's, not the craziest prediction, but I do think that we're going to keep a clean sheet. I could see, maybe a Raul Jimenez goal in the first half or maybe both of them in the second half, however you want to put it. But I just see these 2 goal scorers. I just see these 2. Now, just to put a bow on this video, I just want to say here, for the record, that I'm glad that we're going to play Ecuador and not Scotland, because this is the real test. This will be the real test. And I know that I said that we'll make it easy, whatever. I just think we'll make it look easy. I don't think it will be easy. But games like this are the ones that are really going to determine how we do this tournament, what we're built like, what we're made of. And I think the CONMEBOL test has come early. And I think we'll pass that test with flying colors, okay? This video has gone on long enough. Let's go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much for watching. It's Utopic Draco Future. Please like the video. Please subscribe. I just want to talk also briefly, just to make this video even longer. The Utopic June run has been insane. Up right here, I have a screenshot of how I started on June 3rd. This is a screenshot from June 3rd. I had 300 followers and not that many views. And I'm now up to 1.6. The growth has been exponential, and I think I just have y'all to thank for that. So I just want to thank everyone again so much for watching, for liking, for commenting, for subscribing. I think I've built, as small as it is, I've built a pretty decent community of people that, seem to think the same way as I do. And I get comments that say that, they've been waiting for, someone to kind of say what they've been thinking. So I really appreciate that. I'm not even close to halfway what I want to accomplish in this space. So thank you so much. Join the community, hit subscribe, and I got more coming. Okay. I'll see y'all later, man.